Welcome, welcome. I hope everyone had the chance to meet someone new and think about a good question. So as we're trickling back here, if any interesting questions came out of your breakout groups that you would like to pose to the panelists, I invite you to drop them into the chat, and then we'll try and lift those up and integrate them later on during the panel. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Juliana to introduce our panelists.
Thank you. All right. We have three panelists who are joining us this morning, and they're Hannah Chattelbash of the Midcoast Hunger Prevention Program, Togue Braun from CMaine and many other hats, and Hannah Semler of Farm Drop. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and maybe you all can tell us who you are, what you do, and how you work in the cold chain. And I will drop those prompts into the chat as well. Hannah, you popped up first. Hannah Semler, you popped up first on my screen. So why don't you kick us off?
Sure. I'm Hannah Semler, and I run Farm Drop, which is a statewide network of online market hubs. And we work out of one sort of semi-centralized location in Penobscot. It's the Blue Hill Berry Company. Nicholas Lindholm is also on this call, and he is our wonderful landlord. He processes blueberries 6 weeks out of the year, in which we get creative and move down to the local Grange, but use the cold storage and the facility to aggregate product from over 50 plus farms and serve 30 community market hubs around the state in a complicated way, which I won't get into right now. Thank you.
Shall I go next?
Go for it.
Togue Braun. I founded and run Down East Dayboat, where I am on a mission to differentiate Maine's vastly superior Maine scallops. I ship both fresh and frozen. Started out just fresh. Now I'm dealing with frozen as well, which helps round out the year since the Maine scallop season is just December through March. I'm here, though, in my capacity as the co-chair for CMaine, Seafood Economic Accelerator. And we did a cold storage and logistics, well, we helped arrange a cold storage and logistics study to see some of the gaps that exist in cold storage and logistics transport options for seafood in Maine.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah Chattelbash from Midcoast Hunger Prevention Program. We are a hunger relief organization in Midcoast, Maine. And at the same time, we run the Community Kitchen, which is a shared use processing kitchen space that we operate with the Mary Meeting Food Council, with the support of Sewell and many others in the room. So that's a space where we can ourselves process local Maine product to extend the life cycle of the produce season here in Maine. And we currently partner with about 12 small food businesses who are sharing the space, sharing the dry and cold storage, and we're also doing co-packing to create value-added products for local farms to help them have more opportunity to bring fresh and unique products to market.
Great. Thank you all. Thank you for being here. So I'm going to kick us off with posing to you a question. There's this perception that there's a lack of cold storage in Maine. So I'd like to know, does that ring true to you? And if so, why do you think that's the case? Where are the gaps in access and infrastructure? And that could be within certain geographic areas or economic sectors or a certain size and scale of infrastructure. So Leah just put that prompt in the chat, and I'll let anybody can start off. We don't have to stay in a certain order. So if you're ready
I'll go.
Speak go for it.
I'll do my part here. I would say, so with my Down East Dayboat hat, I would say yes, there's a lack of convenient cold storage. If you're looking for cold storage, you need it to be right by you generally. In terms of seafood, I don't want to have to drive as a small producer. Maybe if I were putting up tens of thousands of pounds once a year, I could use cold storage that was far away. But I'm putting up a small amount on a regular basis, and so I need something fairly close to me. And so with the report that CMaine conducted, the study showed that it wasn't so much a lack of cold storage as a misalignment. So there's a lot a huge amount in Portland, and then there are small amounts, small cold storage options elsewhere, but they're not connected. And I also see that, back to the Down East Dayboat, like I have found when I dig that there are options, but it's not like there's a place you can go to and look up all of the cold storage options. You really just have to know people. And that's also something that our study showed, is that people are figuring it out, but they're doing it on their own. And so there's not an efficient way of doing that. Like I work with Hannah, and Hannah's put a bunch of stuff together. I'm going to stop talking very soon to, pass it off to her with Farm Drop. I mean, she's found how to connect these small places, but there's a lack of a coordinated system to link the producers up with those cold storage options. And so I find myself sometimes getting scallops in Portland, driving them up to Bremen to be processed and stored, and then back down to Portland. There's a lot of inefficiency because of the lack of coordination.
Mm. I have just like a one sort of anecdote. When I was running the gleaning program for Healthy Acadia, and I would have large amounts of fresh vegetables that I just harvested from a farm, I wasn't going to wait to figure out where the cold storage is going to go, because I'm sort of like just do it, figure it out later kind of person. And so I went and harvested all the greens, and then I was like, where am I going to store it? And I would go like, to a gas station and knock on their door and be like, hey, do you happen to have like a cold storage? I need to deliver this to the food pantry tomorrow, but like, I don't have anywhere. And they'd be like, yeah, sure, you can put it here. And I just wanted to say that opened my mind to the idea of like, how do we ask for favors? And then from that, how do we ask for collaboration? I know that like Merrill's and Wyman's have in the past, Blueberry Processing offered their storage up for different seafood fishermen. And so all this to say, like when I was running the gleaning program, finally, instead of like knocking on gas stations' doors to like hold my spinach, we created this shared use mobile CoolBot trailer that we positioned logistically, strategically in a place where all the food pantries could come in and actually select from what was there, so that we weren't dumping too much spinach onto their cold storage. And then Farm Drop is sort of another iteration of that. Like, okay, so we developed for 10 years until we finally found, because Nicholas Lindholm was able to build this cold storage for the blueberry processing, knowing that they would need to put it to use to support local farms and food businesses. And Farm Drop came in and already had this network of food producers where we could collectively like use this storage, but we were just in time because we didn't have storage. So we built around the fact that we didn't have storage. All the product would come in, all the product would go out same day. All of a sudden we have a little walk-in at the Healthy and Grained. We start to hold some product. Now we have 2 walk-in freezers and a CoolBot walk-in. We have dry storage. We have dark storage for potatoes. And now we're sort of figuring out, okay, how do we actually build out this other part of our business to collaboratively offer storage to producers that are wanting to access our neck of the woods. And so we operate on a consignment basis. We're holding a lot of products that we have not yet sold. The farmers are storing it there, and then we sell it through our sales channel. I think it was really important, in order to know how to use the cold storage that was all of a sudden available to us, is because we spent lots of years perfecting the fact that all of the producers on Farm Drop have a shared sales channel. They have a reason to come to the same place. A lot of what happens with infrastructure development is people build it and hope that they will come, without having a collaborative approach to what those producers are trying to do together, or how they might need to sort of like operate. And so we've seen a lot of these like bigger infrastructure developments, like in Belfast or in other parts of the state, fail because there's sort of like a build the infrastructure first. And so I think that what we first need to ask ourselves is not, is there a lack of cold storage, but what is the best use of what is the collective need what kind of storage, what is the collective need when we look at our food system in Maine and sort of like design sort of back down to the ground, like where do we need? And I think that the Berryco facility that Nicholas Lindholm and Ruthie built is a really fascinating look at small scale, but importantly located infrastructure. And I think that that's sort of what kinds of infrastructure do we need where is that like mapping work that the local switchboard has been doing such a great job at. And so I don't know if we have a lack or if we just don't have a sense of what the true need is yet. Because each of us all have different sort of infrastructure needs, but if we don't have a shared design, then we're not going to be able to solve it. I don't know if that helps.
I want to thank Alita and Sylvie for both putting a link to the logistics and cold storage needs assessment. And the executive summary is a super quick, easy read. So I would encourage everyone to check that out because it's got some good information and it attacks that question that you're just mentioning, Hannah. So.
All of that resonates with me, and I think I would just add that affordability is a question here as well. It's not just about location, it is about whether or not that cold storage space is truly affordable from a financial perspective, because we have lots of folks who are interested in renting cold storage from us. And our kitchen, which has been operating for 4 years now, is really never going to be a break-even space. We subsidize it with private philanthropy under our nonprofit umbrella in order to keep it operational. But the actual rental payments from folks who are sharing the cold storage space and sharing the rental kitchen space, in order for it to be feasible and attainable for them, it's not a break-even cost point for us. So there are trade-offs right now with how it's run, and that affordability is definitely a real pressure point.
That's great. Thank you all. So what I'm hearing is that, right, location's not necessarily the issue, right? There are a lot of other factors at play also to making what cold storage exists in any future cold storage accessible, whether that's in terms of how you think about the sort of structure and the logistics around it, or the affordability. Okay, so Hannah Semler, you talked to this a little bit already. You're welcome to speak more to it, and others as well. Our next question is, what has access to cold storage unlocked for you and any producers that you work with or others you work with, in terms of opportunities, markets, et cetera, and what challenges still persist?
Go ahead, Anna.
Oh, no. Well, I think I spoke to this, that we for many years did not have cold storage. So I think your question is interesting because we were able to move in one season without previously having done this, a lot of locally farmed foods to restaurants because we were able to hold product instead of trying to fit all of our distribution into Wednesday. We now had the ability to hold product for a day and deliver wholesale Thursday. So that meant we were able to increase by $80,000, in our first sort of pilot year, how much local food we were able to move to our existing network of restaurants and schools and local retail stores in our region. So that's just one off the top of my head. We were able to add a distribution day and not try to just do what we can on one day because everything's coming in and everything has to go out. So that was one thing. The other thing was we were able to increase the number of producers that are able to participate in Farm Drop because of, not all of them can drive to us on a weekly basis between 9 and 11 on Wednesday for us to be able to fill their orders and deliver to their customers. And so holding products like Harvest Maine is really helpful, and they send their product through a distributor that goes down to the Blue Hill Co-op. Anything going to the Blue Hill Co-op can stop at our warehouse first, so they can do both. And so that means we have more, producers with more access to markets than they previously had. And thirdly, we were able to develop our Food for Health program, which is raising money from community members and buying food surplus from farms and then serving our food pantries and meal sites and local nonprofits with free food delivery, just because we can store it, and that's something that we do on Fridays. So it just relaxed and increased our capacity to do everything that Farm Drop needs to survive, but also that our, customers that are in our communities, both retail customers, wholesale customers, schools, and food pantries. We want to serve, everyone in our region, so that we're sort of piggybacking on our distribution and our routes and our sort of connections to maximize the different kinds of channels that we think our farmers and food producers need increased access to.
I will say a simple thing that made a big difference for me, and this is as I'm speaking as Down East Day Boat now, that so I had always specialized in fresh seafood, fresh scallops, shipping, basically a 1 to 1.5 person operation. And I got a huge order from Sitka Salmon that wanted to offer my scallops. And that was a great opportunity because it introduced me to a lot of their customers. And didn't have adequate frozen freezer space to store the 5,000 pounds of scallops that they wanted. And so I have some friends that are lobstermen that have a frozen bait storage place, and they're like, "Well, just store it at our place, Togue," And so I was able to make a sale of 5,000 1-pound packages of scallops, which was a huge amount for me, because I was able to access their bait storage freezer. And that's the type of stuff that happens a lot of, bait, blueberries, collaboration, because of the seasonality. I think it's critical to really make the most and the most efficient use of our resources is to combine across all of the different, bait, food for people, seafood, agriculture, farm stuff. We tend to live in silos, and there needs to be more collaboration, and that will open up more opportunities. And I'm also really glad to see that Nick is here from Shred Cube, because that's also a really cool solution that he offers to many of our problems.
Yeah, I'd agree that we, kind of similar to what Chris was talking about at the beginning, we've been able to process significantly more product than we were able to do previously. Last year, I think we processed about 22,000 pounds of product. That's mostly gleaned or surplus farm product, or anyone who's interacted with the food banking network knows that when produce comes, it can come in a real glut. And then most of that product ends up frozen, sometimes turned into a value-added refrigerated product for a time before it moves out through the charitable food network. But that's been a huge opportunity for us to rescue more food and ensure that it's getting into the food pantry chain.
I would just add that I'm not sure I answered your question of what challenges still persist. I think that one eye-opening is inventory management. We'd never had to do that. That was always on the producers, on the farmers. Like, they do inventory management, they set their pricing, they put their products up online, they sell, they deliver, right? And it was all like, we were just kind of the curators of that final step to the customer. And all of a sudden we have, thousands of dollars of beef from Caldwell Farm in our freezer. And we're like, okay, like on consignment that has not yet been sold. We haven't purchased it. Like, they're just storing it there. And we need to make sure, that the teams are responsibly managing inventory. So I would say, like, that's been like a learning curve, going from just in time to holding product, and something that we could probably get some like business operations support with. It's not something our technology takes care of. And so that's a challenge. And then the other challenge is, to somebody's point on the chat, is it's not the same for a farmer that is coming to the warehouse with their labeled product by customer and placing it in the customer's bag, and ultimately like really taking on sort of like the full spectrum of what it means to like collaborate and be a part of the sort of like producer network on Farm Drop, than somebody that has a distributor delivering to our warehouse for whom we have to maybe, label that product, put it in. And so we haven't come up with a pricing structure that is fair, because all producers on Farm Drop ultimately get charged like a 15% to sell on Farm Drop. And so we're charging the same amount for somebody who's doing all that work and then also helping us deliver, to someone who we never see and has product on our shelves for whom we're like putting their product, like, you know, and so I think we need to figure out what is for our sake, but also for Berry Co's sake. Like, I think that if they're going to allow for this sort of like community use of storage, the very affordable rent that we pay should also be complemented by how the space is being put to use, and what those other producers that are sort of like maybe further away that are getting access to all of this are contributing to the sustainable use of the space and the costs. And so we need to figure out sort of like some shared sort of pricing and cost out, like, you know, what maybe some of those producers should be paying to support the sustainability of the program.
That leads us nicely into our next question for you all, which is about what are the benefits and the drawbacks of shared use, shared access models for cold storage, and how that applies to pricing, I think is an interesting part of the question as well. And then Tog and Hannah Chattelbash, if you want to respond to persisting challenges too, you're still welcome to return to that question. But yeah, I'd love to hear from you all about any shared use challenges and benefits that you've seen.
I have never had my own facility. Everything I operate is a shared use facility. I got into this, you know, this business after managing helping to manage the scallop fishery in the state of Maine. You know, and it's the scallops come in at the absolute opposite of when lobster comes in. So I figure, well, there's going to be a lobster processor out there that wants to keep his people employed during the winter. So I should just, you know, rent space from them. And so I've rented space from 3 lobster suppliers. I've had people that are interested, you know, oyster growers that are interested in sharing space. There's been lots of different discussions of like, how can we share the space? And of course, the challenges are always, how do you make sure you're all getting what you need and you're not stepping over each other? I mean, one of the places I had a great relationship with a guy in Portland, but he ended up getting busy during his off season with more frozen stuff, and so I had to move out. So there's the challenges, like if you're both growing, if there are holes, but then you grow and those holes get filled in, then that's a problem. And also how to charge for the space. You know, that's definitely a lot of my work has gone into you know, the fisheries management work was looking at communal action problems. And whenever you have a shared collaborative model, certain people are going to put a lot more into it than others, like to Hannah's point before. And so the ones that do all the work are going to get annoyed at the ones that aren't doing any work. And then it's going to be like, Jesus Christ, why am I paying all this money? You know, so there's human nature gets in the way. But there's so much interest in a space for multiple small businesses to do stuff along these lines. I've had a conversation with a seafood baby food supplier that wanted to do something along these lines. And of course, she was doing seafood, so the Fork Food Lab in Portland didn't really want to have seafood people there. But just she and I had conversations with a number of other small suppliers. They were like, yeah, we'd love to do that if this space existed. But how do you set up a system so that no one is taken advantage of and everyone can use the spaces? It's absolutely possible, but it's going to require someone to do the unsexy work of administration and setting up the bylaws and all that. So everyone wants it. Everyone can envision a way in which it would work, but if 10 people are envisioning it differently, then someone's going to have to do that extra work of making it happen. And that's what is lacking, because I know I don't have that bandwidth. So even though I would use it, I just don't have that bandwidth.
I totally hear you, Tog. And we did the work of developing the infrastructure for our kitchen for at least 6 months before we ever brought in our first pilot renter. And even then, only piloted with one to try it out. No, we were in a really fortunate position. We had startup funding from Sewell to do that planning and prep work. We developed I think maybe a 16-page contract for all the renters who share the space to coalesce around the rules, the guidelines, the boundaries, and how we can all share the space in a positive and supportive way. And yet, humans will also still be humans. I mean, the drawbacks of a shared use space for us are often how do we keep it organized, clean? How do we keep it from getting hectic? How do we ensure food safety if one renter's on stacked over another renter and one of them's doing chicken and one of them's doing ice cream and all different, kind of continually having to process that and work with the renters and move product around to ensure that everything is safe and everyone is getting what they want and need from it, like Toke said. Um, Additionally, we're at capacity. The freezers they're full. So that tells me there is more need for this work than what we're able to provide. We often are picking up small food businesses who have looked at Fork, but they really are not looking to drive down to Portland. Like the Brunswick Midcoast Maine area is a little bit more logistically feasible for them. Um, and so from a geographic reason they end up with us. Um, and so that's been great for that small cohort, but we are a small limited scale. We can, like I said, we're at capacity with who we have. We can only take on 10 to 12 at a time. So that's definitely an ongoing challenge. I have loved seeing the shared use model flourish, though. I've loved seeing these small food businesses work and learn from each other. They not only build relationships with us, but they build relationships with one another as they're in the space together. And that has been really cool and exciting to see, while the space has also given them some efficiency, allowed them to work a little closer to home, hopefully. And we add some of those additional supports, like we'll take deliveries for them, or sign for packages for them. Some of those extra pieces, offer the use of our loading dock. Some of those pieces that are really tough when you're just starting out trying to build your business, and most of them are working other day jobs at the same time, right? This isn't whatever product they're trying to develop is not their only hat. Um, so it's been very cool to be able to work with supporting them, and yeah, I think there are a lot of continued ongoing challenges in terms of managing the space and the kind of natural turnover of managing a cohort of tenants essentially who come and go on a somewhat regular basis.
I guess I would just add that although we work with a lot of different producers in a lot of different ways, Farm Drop, aside from sort of occasional sort of feelers that Nicholas, who's on this call, and feel free to speak, Nicholas, it's not yet a shared use in the sense that Farm Drop is the tenant of that space. When Berry Co. isn't in there. So like really the two businesses that are sharing the space technically are like Farm Drop and then Berry Co. And I would say that it's like worked out really well. I would hesitate to want to be a part of a space that has like, you know, 10 other renters like myself trying to like divvy up the small, walk-in, and or like, make sure that the, freezer is latched, right? Like, because otherwise that's a lot of like product that I'm responsible for that all of a sudden, if there are a lot of other people managing that space. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is like any shared use space needs to have like a responsible entity and the partner that is like ultimately responsible for managing that shared use. And I think that in this case, Farm Drop is the manager of the shared use, which is all the producers that sell on Farm Drop, and they all have like a common goal. We sort of force producers to collaborate because they're on the same marketing channel, they're going through the same sales channel, and therefore they have like the same infrastructure model, right? And it's all managed under the Farm Drop umbrella, but they don't ever have to talk to each other. So like we don't have to worry about farmers getting along, or like they're not in charge of like if they drop off and we're not there, we tell them where, there's like different situations in which we can support sort of like access to the space, but we're not necessarily managing, I don't think at this point, a shared use space. So I can't really speak too much to that, if that makes sense.
I want to just quickly, just a funny little story is that so in the space that I have shared use space, and to your point of like, is the freezer latched? I walked in a really hot day a couple years ago in July, and the freezer was wide open, and there was one of the interns working for one of the other companies in there like this, just cooling down with the door wide open. I'm like, there's $10,000 worth of frozen scallops in here. Like, this is not an appropriate place to cool yourself, or at least shut the door, you know?
And at Chattelbash, have you like had moments like that at your space, or have you? But what have you figured out about like that nitty gritty of making sure that like doors are closed and that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we do have a really robust video camera system, so it doesn't inform us if things go wrong, but we can figure out what goes wrong afterwards. We also do have our coolers and freezers are attached to our security system. So if they go above or below temp, I get called, and then we can go in and try to tackle that. It is a lot of work for the managing entity. Absolutely. You are very responsible. And it does mean that you could get that call. If you have a renter who's there working until 11 o'clock at night, you could get that call at 11:30, 12, that one of the coolers is losing temp and you have to go check it out. And we've had that happen. Absolutely. But yeah, that's for sure some of the risks associated with running a shared use cold space.
Nick, do you want to pipe in just because have been you've been named many times here from the
Nicholas.
Berryco perspective? Nicholas
Yeah.
Lindum.
Was that me? Yeah, I just raised my hand. Thanks. Because I have a couple of questions, kind of wondering what the capacity of the local switchboard folks are in terms of like developing standard operating procedures like SOPs for shared use. I mean, I saw earlier today he shared great resources on forward contracting, which is something I've kind of been working on as well. But I wonder if kind of because like Hannah Semler spoke to, we've had minor, questions of the freezer door, the back door being left open, things like that. But also, like my wife and I are kind of poised and wanting to expand and speaking with other wild blueberry growers to increase our processing and storage capacity of blueberries. So our business growth, which may or may not happen, is kind of something to be in conversation with Farm Drop about, as the capacity of a single facility can only be so large. So I see there's many benefits to shared use, but there's many challenges too. So any resources that especially the local switchboard could help fill in the gaps or even foresee, down the road where issues or challenges might come to help us address, that would just be great. So that's more of a request than a question.
That's great. Thank you. And we can speak more to this too when we get to like the Q&A part. And if you have any thoughts from your perspective on sharing a space with Farm Drop, feel free to pop up now or a little bit later on, or share any thoughts in the chat too. Yeah, Hannah Sellers.
Nicholas, I can leave so you can speak freely. No, I think to your Nicholas, yeah, go ahead.
No, not at all. We are so psyched. And full transparency, my wife and I built our new building with the AIIP award. And if anyone is familiar with what the AIIP grant program was, it was for processing or post-harvest infrastructure. And the kind of priority was for multi-use or multi-farm or multi-business or up and down the full chain sort of projects. And that was our intention. In our proposal, we wanted to be involved with other blueberry farms and blueberry processors. Most of that has yet to kind of be built. Some of the processors kind of reduced their scale. Anyway, things changed as well between 2023, 24. So we're really thrilled to have Farm Drop use the space, and they're using it, I would say, even more than our little operation does currently but kind of the awkward thing is that we need to be in there for 4 to 6 weeks during the blueberry harvest. But that's all we need the space for. So. And it sounded
That's
like
great.
Togue, had similar situations with lobster versus scallops. Like different Maine food products have different seasons, so it's awesome when we can kind of dovetail with each other.
To
Yeah.
Nick's point about like having like resources, like we for a long time had all of the fish in separate freezers in the kitchen because like we had not yet gotten the like okay from the Department of Agriculture that like if it's frozen it can be in the same freezer as like the frozen beef. And so we were like, oh, no, you don't have to like only bring a certain amount that fits in that tiny little freezer, Togue. You can drop off as many scallops as you want. Which, it didn't set us back, but I think that more understanding of like what can go into shared frozen storage, like, what can be stored, what can be, uh, done in a facility that is also then for 6 weeks processing organic blueberries. I don't know, Togue, you came into this space and we're like, oh, this would be an amazing spot for us to do, processing. Like, would that work? Like, those kinds of things I think would be interesting to get some more research and information on.
Yeah, I'm always on the lookout for processing spaces because you never know when the person I'm renting from is gonna grow and size me out. So
I'm going to piggyback on that comment for our next question, which is what does a decentralized cold chain or cold storage network mean to you? And what could that look like in Maine? So Togue, you have spoken a little bit to this already in terms of what's happening in the seafood sector, where folks are figuring out where those cold storage opportunities are, even though they're not, sort of consolidated, or either they're not physically centralized or even the information about them isn't centralized anywhere. But what does that decentralized network look like?
I mean, I can tell you about what I've done, but also in the cold storage needs and logistics study report that there's in the link there in the chat. They talked about just a coordination hub. So like having someone that was aware of all again, you're going to need someone that's going to do this work. So is it, just some benevolent rich person that decides they want to retire and do this? Probably not. Like, how are you going to get that funded? That's the question, because there's never going to be enough benefit from doing it for one person to take on that load. And Sylvie, if you want to pipe in here, also, you're probably far more familiar with the needs assessment than I am. But I mean, the way I've done it is really what the needs assessment said generally is the way it gets done, is that people just make phone calls and they find people. So, I've operated out of Pembroke, out of Hancock, out of um, let's see, Portland, Bremen, Brunswick, like all of these little places, when something falls through, I'm like, okay, well, I'll make it work this time. But there's a lot of effort involved in setting these places up. And it would be nice if there were some sort of a coordination hub that someone was doing this for all of us and linking between, because we're all busy, and providing a resource of we can call and say, hey, I need access to blank in this area. Who's that going to be? And so that would be ideal. It doesn't exist right now.
I think Togue is your spokesperson for the local food switchboard now. I think she's there for
Totally.
it. Yep.
I'll back that up too. I'll say that like what I've, people are always like, oh, local food switchboard, isn't that competing with Farm Drop? And I'm like, no, can you imagine if like we could be like, hey, Western Maine, we want to set up a Farm Drop to support the local farms. Like, where's your storage? Who's doing distribution? Who's going where, what? Like, what's the network? Like, here's the 20 people that we can call and say, are you interested? Do you want to have a meeting? Like, to do that work is what's keeping us from further developing, right? Or just because like we can't imagine going out and doing that. I would add to that I think that there are specific services that I hope the local food switchboard would continue to develop, not just as the connector, but as like sort of analyzing data and providing studies and doing research and sort of suggesting strategies and solutions and doing that ongoing sort of networking and weaving together the network. I think the decentralized food system is the only way we're going to survive. I don't think it's an option. I don't think collaboration is an option. I don't think shared storage is an option. I don't think we have the ability or the natural environmental resources to actually sustain our every wish at every moment of what our individual sort of like little storage world. I don't want to be operating alone in a warehouse. It's not that great, right? But if it's a community space and there's a retail out front and there's cooking classes in the back and like there's this like vibrant community like what Fork Food Lab has been able to build, and then that becomes like that sort of multi-use space. I don't think it's just about storage. It's about like what do these communities need to have a vibrant food system, and I think that they need an appropriately scaled like Swiss Army knife of local food systems. And it's something that I think, we have a little piece of that at Berry Co. We also need like, farmer-owned retail space downtown in Blue Hill. We also need like communication systems for a distribution network to make those decentralized hubs like work and operate. Like, and so I think a lot of our like, leaving the freezer door open, that's a communications issue. It's a control issue. It's like somebody going in and checking every day that everything looks good. But on the other side of that, there's that like upfront communication systems. And I think that really what we lack is technology, because actually what we're doing is much more complex. Amazon can't ship lettuce from Blue Hill to Blue Hill. I can, right? Like, but it's a lot more complicated than what Amazon is doing, actually. They're just centralizing everything and then filling orders. Like, we're like, no, you own your product. You all own your product. You all get paid directly for your product. And we just sort of like come together in this mad dash for 3 hours and send all that back out so that you stay owners of what you're doing. And that's at the core of why we wanted a decentralized network system, is so that the farmers and the makers can stay in control and stay the owners of the food system. And so I think that whatever we do to design for that is going to need to come from like it's going to determine sort of the design of the shared infrastructure. But I think it comes back from that like shared communication and co-design, and then back to like, okay, what in addition to storage do these hubs and facilities need to do, and how many of them do we need down east? I say like off the top of my head, probably 5 Swiss Army knives of local food systems. Southwest Harbor fishermen don't want to drive to Penobscot. So, how do we build these like mini Swiss Army knife food hubs that serve all of these needs? And then we can connect the network.
I love that vision. And it sounds like there's that's what Mid-Coast Hunger Prevention Program is doing also in Brunswick, right? That there being a Swiss Army knife to fit that community's needs right now too. So love hearing about all of these different projects. Thank you all for sharing about your work. And I'd like to turn to the Q&A portion now. We have some questions that have come in the chat. We have some questions that are now in the agenda. I would invite folks, if you want to ask a question, live, feel free to raise your hand and do that. So while you're working on raising your hands, I will ask a question that Ron brought up. A pinch point to extend local foods for food pantries and institutions. We need longer and cheaper frozen storage for value-added processed product. Any ideas, right, to make frozen storage sustainable instead of us all doing it alone? I feel like we've shared a lot, but if you all have other sort of more specific thoughts for Ron to that point.
We have an entire walk-in freezer that is turned off at Berry Co. that could be turned on, and I'm sure that could help us serve schools and accessing. those products on our distribution route. Nicholas has a distribution van with freezer, uh, frozen distribution van. I don't know what you call it. But yeah, just is that, am I responding to that question correctly, Ron? Sort of.
Yeah, I think it's kind of what Hannah talked about. It's very nice to have the processing of the freezer in the same place. But if we want to put together the greens for Presente, Maine over the winter time, so they're not buying greens in off the marketplace, then you need to be able to have storage for 10,000 pounds of, so 5 pallets, 6 pallets. And, that's not affordable once you try to add that price onto the price per pound you're already getting. So it's the same thing we've heard a couple times, and I've experienced at Maine Pharmacy Cooperative, is how do you put on that extra price onto something that's already incredibly expensive most of the time? Thanks,
Yeah,
Hannah.
Ron, I think you you hit the nail on the head, right? Like we've worked with you all with the greens processing work in our processing kitchen, and we too, like Hannah said, also have a freezer that's turned off. That should be a red flag for everyone that we all have freezers that are off right now. Um, and the problem isn't that there isn't a need for those freezers to be filled. The problem is that nobody can afford to run them. So I don't honestly have an answer. I'm just commiserating with you about the problem.
But
We have
I
another.
thought that in particular with frozen, the more product in there, the better, right? Like, I mean, couldn't like the fact that you're storing like thousands of dollars of beef like offset the cost like of the spinach, which is just it takes up more space, but do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't cost more. In fact, the more product in a freezer, the better it runs. And so, like, we don't have to be capitalistic about this. Like, if we have beef in a freezer and they want to store spinach in there, like, why would we charge them if it doesn't cost more? It's like better to have more product in there. So, like, maybe there's like a flat fee just to like cover like moving the pallets or having to like, but I don't think it should be a business model to charge for storage. I think it should be like how do we support the food system connectivity? I think we need to like change our mentality around frozen storage, maybe. I don't know.
That's very idealistic.
Yeah.
I think that's true if you have the space and it's already running, you're already paying for it, and it just has empty space in it. If it's a trade-off between turning a unit on, in which case it's going to probably cost you anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000 a year just to run it, and turning it off because you don't actually have a direct need for it at the time, that's a pretty hard call to make, at least for an organization like ours with the operating budget that we have.
Totally. No, I agree. Like, but now that we have one of them open, like, I mean, we haven't started like even thinking about like, it's included in our rent, right? And so like for Nicholas's blueberries, it's good to have the beef in there because it's also like if the power goes out, it's likely to stay frozen longer. And so there's like it's sort of like shifting the idea around um how the multi-use design of a freezer space. And it's like, okay, well, definitely have a lot of the beef in there because it serves as like ice packs. And then like that's the high value stuff that you can afford to like charge for that, right? And then like have the sort of like food for health umbrella include schools and food pantries and meal sites. And like you're not going to charge for that. You're trying to feed kids healthy food. Like like, so I don't know. I think that there's also some grant funding and subsidies, but even within business models, we could try to figure out like what can afford to be charged and what can't and make that call. And so I think what the answer is that more business should be doing both. More business, more social business, where we're actually trying to piggyback doing the right thing that's needed for the schools, for the kids, for the food pantries on a social business model that is trying to sort of like pay for itself and its costs, but that isn't trying to necessarily, charge a food pantry or school the same amount. We have to figure out democratize access to food somehow.
I think and this also points out that there's so many variables. Like for what you say makes total sense, but if you've got like 3 or 4 companies coming together to create a shared space, they want to divide the costs of that freezer. So in that case, they would need to charge. But that there's so many different options, and someone put on here like what's the cost right now for freezer space, and it completely varies. Like, yeah, when I stored mine in my friend's bait freezer, I didn't pay a thing, but you're going to pay $30 a pallet if you're going to go down to Portland. It really depends. And it's so variable because we're all just linking up what, each individual case by case situation.
And the question in there that about the viable rates too, right? Viability for whom and where are probably other factors. And I'm sure it varies a lot depending on different setups. All right, we're at our wrap up time for this panel. So there's one more question, which was about ShredCube and what ShredCube has done for Togue. So I'm going to put that in the chat, Togue, if you're able to sort of respond to it there, or very quickly.
It hasn't done anything yet for me, but I can't wait to do it just because it's such a cool concept. And can we have Nick speak briefly or no?
Yep, I'm here. We haven't done anything yet, but we have one ready and built. And, we're really open to different models of how ShredCubes could be useful, not just functionally, but, whether it's seasonal rentals or leasing programs or lease to own, or maybe Shred just keeps a bunch of them ready to go when people need them. Also, a lot of our R&D over the past few years has been funded by various USDA programs, large and small. And so we've learned that through like the value added processing grant, there's some small funding available to help offset or fully eliminate the cost of a ShredCube potentially. Also, they're coming out with a minor equipment grant for specialized crops. So, we're not really in a space where we're just trying to sell ShredCubes because they're, the cat's pajamas. It's more of, we think it's pretty cool that it can be really independent and portable, and you could fill it up on a farm or a sea farm and then put it right into a truck.
And it's a solar powered cooling system, in case folks don't realize that. Solar into battery, yeah.
Yeah, and you can just kind of shove it in and out of the back of a pickup truck, or have it on a trailer, or forklift it, or gantry crane it. The smaller unit is rotiform plastic molded, about 25 cubic feet of storage with a solar panel and a battery built in. Also, you can plug it in with an extension cord. And then we build larger units where the walls and ceiling and floor are actually made out of recycled plastic bottles. And those can be anywhere. We can really build those any size. The largest one we've done so far is 8-foot length, 4x4 with a slide out tray and shelving. And that's about 200 cubic feet. But
That's
yeah,
great,
the idea is it just
Nick,
kind of
I'm going to
runs.
cut you off
Oh,
there
good.
just because we're almost out of time and I want to make sure
Okay.
we can properly wrap up, but feel free to share more information in the chat or send it to Alita to share out. And Alita, I'll
Great,
hand
thanks.
it back to you.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Juliana. Thanks, and thank you to all of our panelists for being here and sharing your perspectives on this topic. I just dropped into the chat a reminder link for our upcoming webinars, and then also a link to our impact survey. This really helps us demonstrate the impact of what we're doing when we get together as a local food processing work group. So if you have a chance to fill that out before you go, appreciate it. And thanks everyone for being here today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday, and we'll touch base soon. Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care.